unintended consequence that we're seeing in the community.
Speaking of community, I wanted to welcome everyone to the Building Community Around Your Business panel. We've got a great set of panelists here with a bunch of different points of view. We want all your questions, so put them in the chat room, put them in the live chat there on YouTube Live. And we'll answer them. And I want to get started by introducing our panelists, and we might as well get started with Ash from Startup Fuel. How you doing today, Ash?
I'm doing fantastic. Lots of work, lots of things going on, but you know what? Still surviving to this crazy pandemic and trying to stay sane as much as possible.
So tell us about you and Startup Fuel.
Yeah, so Startup Fuel is basically a LinkedIn type network for the startup ecosystem. We have to find a way to organize all the players in the startup space locally and globally. And we're trying to basically remove the physical barriers needed to access resources like competitions, capital, programs, and almost put it into an easy digestible format. So that's on one side. And then the other side of it, we have a software that helps venture capital investors launch their funds, run deal flow intake, due diligence, and make investments and track those deal flow. So we're basically a company that is consistently building technology to improve startup ecosystems and reduce failure rate of all the players internally. These are the first technologies we started with, but we have a long roadmap, product roadmap for the next couple of years with various ideas to keep improving it, and partnerships like Equivesto and other ones that we want to continuously develop to help unite the community together.
You're muted, Craig.
Thanks. That was a great summary of Startup Fuel, and I'm looking forward to all the directions you're going. Sean, over to you. Why don't you tell us about you and what you're doing over at the Board of Trade in the World Trade Center?
Yeah, thanks, Craig. So I'm working with the World Trade Center, which is the trade enabling services arm of the Toronto Region Board of Trade. I don't think a lot of people know, but the Toronto Region Board of Trade is actually the oldest board of trade in North America at 175 years young, which is a pretty crazy established organization. And the board itself has just been a great hub for bringing together large enterprise companies in the community, but also matching them with small to medium-sized businesses. So there's that sharing of knowledge and experience, and then representing the voices of businesses collectively to the various levels of government, and helping to advocate on just things that we need to see that would be pro-business and for the community and enabling trade. And so a lot of that thought work led to the launching of the World Trade Center about 5 years ago from the board. And what we've done is enabled these 3 big programs for companies. One of them helps companies get their export plan. So figuring out exactly what you need from a legal perspective, logistics, landing materials, or how do you want to incorporate your business within these regions. So we have the Trade Accelerator program that does that. We also run trade missions. So we actually bring people into market and really target emerging markets specifically, get you in there, educate you on the region, the nuance of it, and set up the B2B meetings that help you get that first sale. And then from there, as you start to scale and see that growth, we launched the Scaleup Institute Toronto. And that has been a really awesome program that we've had just for about 18 months now. And in that, we've done the Recovery Activation Program, which has helped companies as through the whole pandemic time have kind of been dragged kicking and screaming into the digital space. And what we've done is we've created this diagnostic tool called the Digital Needs Assessment, or the catchy DNA for short. And it's a great way for companies to go in and do a quick assessment and benchmark their scores across 8 capabilities against industry benchmarks, and really get that strategic plan for them to help triage and say, okay, well, maybe I need to invest some money in my ERP system, or I don't have a strong enough CRM right now, or maybe I'm still writing checks in a paper fashion, as opposed to embracing digital payments. So all of that's been really, really helpful. We found we've been lucky. Just this past week, we did our 1,000th company through there in less than 6 months, getting their digital needs assessment. So part of 3 great programs that we offer to the business community as you get on your feet and you want to spread your wings a little bit more and grow.
That's great. I think there's a lot of things that people don't know about the Toronto Board of Trade, and I think we'll get through some of them today. And Alex, why don't we talk about you and Equivesto?
Yeah, so I'm the co-founder and managing director of Equivesto. Equivesto is an equity crowdfunding platform that helps small, medium-sized businesses and startups raise capital by getting direct investment from their communities. And people can invest starting with as little as $100. So it's really, we're excited to work with Startup Fuel. And if you're looking for VCs, that's great. So all the power to you. But if you're looking to potentially get funded with your community instead of VCs, then maybe you want to talk to us.
So we might as well start with you, Alex.
Yeah.
How important is community when you're talking about a business? Because a lot of people just think business. I just need to sell stuff. Well, what's this community word?
Yeah, so I think that's a great point. Oftentimes people think, okay, it's important to build a community if I'm going to general consumers or like retail consumers, like if I'm selling stuff on the street to sort of John Q public, I need to make sure I build a community or a network of people who will know about my business and want to buy my products. But community is important regardless of, the type of customer you have, whether you're B2B or B2C, because community is really about the people who are interacting with your business. The whole idea of business is to engage a product or service with another entity and create value, right? And so those customers, those suppliers you work with, everyone around you becomes part of a community that you build around your business. Your supporters, it doesn't matter whether all of your customers are giant sort of enterprise level individuals and you go on a trade mission to China with Sean to sort of meet more of them, or whether you're focused on really a local business like a brewery in Alberta, you're still dealing with a community of people. And the way you set up and manage your business and those relationships can define sort of what that community is and how it interacts.
Sean, you're talking about going into expanding into foreign markets. How important is community when, you're going from, say, Canada to, I know you've got a trade mission to Vietnam coming up and you've got some other stuff. But if you're going into these foreign markets, how important is community when expanding that way?
I think it's essential, and I think it's essential on a couple of fronts. One, it's feeling out and understanding the community that you're going into and appreciating that there's a lot of nuance there and that you can't necessarily take your Canadian business or North American business lens and apply that paradigm as you're going into these markets and assume that things are all handled the same way. There's a great book title that one of my colleagues always talks about, and it's called "Thank You for Being Late." And especially if you're going into Latin American markets, sometimes like being super prompt and showing up on time can actually be seen as an insult in these meetings. So you need to know the nuance of that community so that you can integrate and you can work within the community confines there. I think also looking around your community of people who've also gone into the markets that you're trying to go into and using those shared experiences and understanding. I mean, they say experience is mistakes remembered, and then wisdom is when you can remember the mistakes of others. So utilizing the community's breadth and depth of experience, having gone into those regions, cautioning you on these sort of bear traps here, or there might be a little bit of nuance that you wouldn't be aware of over there that can help your business hit the ground running and be, have that opportunity for success in a shorter period of time, which is obviously so crucial in the competitive landscape nowadays.
Indeed. Ash, from your perspective, you're building a multi-sided market with multi-communities. Is it twice as hard or even more than that to build, all these separate communities under your platform?
Yes and no. I mean, there are like Alex was talking about. There are pretty levels of interest. I mean, we're all human beings, and before everything came into these like city structure world, communities drove survival. That's what it was. Being part of communities means you can exchange resources, exchange knowledge, find better ways of doing things. When I'm going about it in the business world, it starts to realizing that you get competitive advantage from the network you have around you, and the people around you contribute to your successes as well. So there are always people that are surround certain concepts. When you take those concepts and you flesh it out, you can build multiple communities. You can be part of, a Toronto community. If you're in part of one city, you can be part of a Canadian community. But when you start looking at, there's that famous word to the phrase, it takes a village to raise a child. It takes a community to build a business. It honestly does. Like, it takes a lot of people that comes into play. And when when you are building multiple facets of this community, you have to take into account what the purpose is. So when you say community, it's not just, hey, let's just get people together and sing kumbaya by the fire. It doesn't make sense. There has to be a real purpose behind it, and that attracts people together and adds value seemingly across the community. Without that value piece, it will fall apart very quickly. But just as a word of note, nowadays, with social media, with the ability to track community members across multiple platforms and things, it's actually becoming a huge benefit. We're seeing a lot in the pandemic. People who have built communities can tap into it. I know TorontoStarts is a great community itself. And, just being able to tap into that at times when you need help, advice, success, so to lead to success isn't easy, and it needs to be built over time and fostered.
Yeah, and a lot of startups we have are starting, or businesses are starting from scratch with no community. And it's one thing when you're trying to build one locally, but Sean, how do you build a community where you don't have one? Like, again, if you're not physically located somewhere, how do you start engaging that community?
I think you look for there's definitely some organic paths that you can take where you're going out and you're putting yourself out at various events and you're introducing yourself. But that's not necessarily wired into every individual who's doing that with their business. But I looked at, with Workhouse, and when we went out to Calgary, one of our biggest things was joining the Chamber of Commerce. That's an established community that's there. And I actually think the pandemic's been a great eye opener for a number of businesses saying, well, I need access to a larger community. I want to be able to bounce ideas off of here, best practices on how do I weather the storm here? Where should I be pivoting? And then also, especially when there's a whole bunch of government programs that are out there, how do I navigate through that? And so having people that can act as your steward, those really good pillars of a community, it's great. So I would always look around and say, what are those large organizations that are out there that are bringing people together where there's shared experiences, shared problems, and make sure that you're signing up and you're participating in those. And it's not just simply like scratching a check for membership or something. It's being active, it's contributing and saying, are there chat boards, are there events, getting out there, socializing your problems. It's one of those things, if you put something out in the universe, usually the universe is good at helping you back and bringing things forward. So I think more people are seeing the need and the importance of these organizations and the work that they do.
And don't forget, for any of Alex and Ash and Sean, you can jump in on any of these other questions as well as we start to move forward. Alex, building an email list is one thing, but getting people to actually buy your product, or specifically with Equivesto, invest in your business, is a whole other matter. Right. So how do you get people emotionally invested enough to do that, to speak with their wallet?
Yeah. And, it's going to sound pretty straightforward, but it's really about leading with your why. Ash mentioned, we're at the end of this, we're all people at the base, we're all people, and connecting on that sort of emotional level about our shared goals and desires as, human beings living on this little planet Earth. There's so many ways that you can sort of share that journey, that why, the reason why you've created your business and how that's driving you forward and inspiring you. Sharing that story with individuals in your community is a really great way to sort of get them more excited to emotionally connect with what you're doing, and then be willing to sort of take that next step. And whether that's, buy your product or read the email that you've sent them, or sign up for a pamphlet, or actually invest in your business, creating that emotional connection is so critical. And it's such a great exercise to really even reflect on for yourself. Connecting back with your own personal why can really help remind you why you're going through all this work in the pandemic to keep your small business running, instead of just, I'll go work for whoever the big company is. Why I want to do this, why I want to make that change, and your personal why, but also the why of your community. Okay, this member of my community, my potential customer, what is their why? Why are they using my product? How is my product making a big difference in their life? And making sure that you're creating a product that does hit somebody's why. It's one of the top 3 problems that they're facing at the moment, or whatever it is. You're the one, Craig, who's the expert at creating product market fit, but making sure that you sort of speak to that real need that people are facing, so that when you're solving it, they appreciate that emotionally, and then they can connect as well with your why, with their why, and sort of build through that.
So Ash, how do I get people, or how do you get people to think about Startup Fuel as a community, as a place to go get funding, as a place to get information, as a resource of support of entrepreneurs, versus any of the other number of resources out there?
Yeah, I mean, I do a lot of research around this, and I have a book ready for this too. This is a book called Decoding Silicon Valley. It basically is a whole blueprint of how the entire startup movement began, what it involves. And one of the pages has a community right in it, where this is the startup community, where you've got startups in the middle and you have all these organizations that surround it. And this is what naturally transpired to become Silicon Valley. Nobody planned it. It didn't happen because the government officials were saying we need this and this. It naturally came out based on needs. And so when I build community online, I try to replicate systems out there akin to what Alex said about emotionally connecting people together around passions. Because at the end of the day, that's all that drives us, right? Remove the money, remove the success, the fame, everything. We all just want to be part of something. We all want to be included and be involved. And there's a lot of people like us out there. When you start looking at characteristics of individuals that share similarities, and then start saying, okay, how do we now bring people together, and where people are having problems, we can help each other find it and solve those problems. I think that's the real point of community. It's not easy. It takes a lot of time to understand, navigate the ins and outs of what topics to pick to surround around. What is the basis of that genesis of the community, or the nexus? Once you have that, there's so many verticals to expand from there. In my case, in Startup Fuel's case, everything startup, innovation, entrepreneurship, that's our community, where we're trying to build resources and links, right? But for another group out there, if you're a different business, your community could be anything. But picking one thing where you want to add value, becoming a thought leader in that community and helping people bridge gaps, that's all what community is about.
I'm just going to jump in on that there, Craig. I totally agree with what Ash is saying. And it's even what Sean mentioned before about creating a community or entering a community when you don't have any previous sort of connections there. It's about just stepping forward and trying to provide some value to people that is going to help them in some way solve their problem. Putting something out into the universe by showing that value, asking essentially nothing in return, and just being a constructive member of the community is a really great way to do that. Like Craig, we have the office hours that Equivesto does through TorontoStarts, and people can always email and reach out, and we're doing that. And I know, Ash, there's so many ways that you're always trying to sort of give back to the community. It's a great way that you can sort of just help someone because you care and because you want to assist and sort of help them move forward. That really sort of explains your why to people. It becomes visible through your actions, the reasons that you're choosing to do stuff, because you're doing it just because you want to and not because anyone's paying you. And then from that, they'll be excited by that and sort of come in and join you.
I think that's important, Alex, especially the idea of paying it forward too. Going out there and saying, look, I've made some mistakes, or other people mentored me and gave me advice at these different key intervals, and understanding that you want to see that in the ecosystem, because if people look around and they see that everyone's really being helpful and stuff, that encourages it. That gets that person off the sidelines where they're like, I've had this idea to start this thing or something like that. But when they see and they hear from other people that, yeah, there's a lot of people there to catch you as you go out and do this. And even if you do fall, help dust you off and keep you moving forward. I think that's really the energy that people feel. And I think Toronto does a really, really good job of having that out there, that people aren't working on ideas and like hiding their laptops and like covering things. And it's that lone wolf mentality. I really think there's the rising tide will raise all the ships.
Yeah. Again, I want to re-echo again what Alex said too. It's like if you're coming into a community with the idea that you're trying to get something out of it before giving something, you're going to get nothing. You're going to end up going nowhere. You need to come in with the mindset that, look, there's and let me make a very clear distinction here. There's a difference between business communities and things that are not business communities. And the big differentiator is that there's a real end game for a business community. Like you have a real clear objective metric or something that you're trying to improve, but you have value-added services that come there first and then they kind of like trickle down into your value or your metrics later on, as opposed to other communities where it may not be a pointing back to a business or pointing it back. It might be just an emotional connection you have or something you want to do. So if we're specifically talking about business communities here and trying to build that for your business, before starting a community, you need to know what your end goal with the community is. Like, what am I trying to achieve out of this? Once you understand that, how can I add enough value that people trust me as trust our community as the place to go when they're in hard times, when they don't know what to do, where to turn? We can be that guiding light, that banner for them, right? Once you start becoming that group, everything else comes naturally around it.
Well, I think I don't speak for everyone, and people who are here can, put their points in the chat room. But I think people want to build a bit like their goal for building community around their business is sustainability of their business, as well as, making sure if you're at a startup level, you want to always be communicating with your clients. You want to know what's happening, the changes in their mood and desire. You don't want to be the blockbuster left behind by Netflix because people don't want to leave their house and they're tired of rewind fees or all those things, and miss those messaging. That's why you build the community to understand what they are, continue to have a sustainable revenue model, but also to add value. I don't want to put the revenue too low on that pole. It's really high. You have a business. The reason to be in business is to make money so I can feed my family, so I can hire people, so that, we can live. Outside of that, yeah, great. If I can help people, if I can do this, all these things are just benefits, and that they are, the money's not necessarily your main motivator, but without the money, it's really hard for your business to exist 6 months from now. So I think for me, we want to look at community as, your supporters, and the people that are going to help you when times are tough, and the people that will give you the sustainable business growth you need, but also the people you can help the most.
Yeah, and I think the community IQ is also something that you tap into, right? I mean, as you're a business and you're starting, and what are the grant programs out there? What are the funding vehicles? What are the things that I can do to extend my runway, to give me that opportunity to find my proper product market fit or service fit, and understanding too that, I mean, I look at being in some of the tech accelerators, and they're great and they're very focused, but you also have to be a little cautious sometimes of the echo chamber that can create as well. I mean, if you're in a community like a co-working space where you've got a crazy cross-section of businesses there, sometimes it's really easy to pitch your tech idea to other people who are in the tech space. But, if you've got a person who's working there and they're a professional public speaking coach, and then you're pitching your business to them, they're going to have a very different lens on what you're trying to do, and they can give you really good feedback that you probably wouldn't have normally had. And those are the sort of qualitative benefits that you get from that community, and things you're not necessarily be able to do on your own, and sort of diagnose that way. It's about leaning in on the wisdom of others, as I've kind of said earlier.
Yeah, just to hop in, sort of continue on that a little bit. Greg, your point was good about, the purpose of a business is to make money and feed your family and everything, and you don't want to ignore that and everything. I agree. I would add to that though, if you're coming in and you're trying to create a community or interact with people purely from I am interacting with you because you will give me money for something, people can feel that changes the feeling of the conversation and like that interaction for sure. And so if you're in a place where it's like, okay, we're at a trade show and I'm here to talk to your booth because I want to buy your product, that's very different than if like, okay, I'm at a networking event at a co-working space, or I'm at, my church's afternoon luncheon, or, whatever it is the community is that you're in at that moment. If you're approaching it with how can I get something from you? People are going to sense that, and it's not going to go the way that you want. And so even though the goal of your business is to make money, if you approach every interaction with a community with how can I benefit from this immediate first interaction, you're going to lose out on all these other ways that the community can benefit you and lead to more of that revenue down the line. And so approaching, like if what Sean was talking about, if you're at an event and you're trying to pitch someone to get their feedback on your business and they're not a tech founder and they don't know about the tech ecosystem, they're a pitch coach and they only care about money, they're going to say, I'm not going to give you feedback. You can hire me and then you pay me to give you an analysis of your business pitch, and then you will have this relationship. The better way would be for that pitch coach to give you free advice, like to listen, just give you their feedback. And then you're like, wow, this is great feedback. And then they're like, hey, by the way, here's my sales pitch. You can hire me to help your pitch get better. And then they've already seen the value in your service because they gave you a bit of it for free. Shout out to Will from Out Loud Speaker School, does some great events with Craig. You should check out his pitch coaching.
Yeah, when you pitch them and they go, I saw 7 things that you just said, and number 4 blew my mind.
I think you nailed it. But there is the other side of that, you know, finding the people to which you can add the most value and building that community. There's nothing wrong with the mindset of going in and saying, all right, I'm here at this networking event and I'm going to try and figure out what the biggest problems are and which ones maybe I can solve. And then, you know, maybe I can start relationships with the 3 or 4 people who have those problems, and maybe down the road they will eventually become my clients. I don't need $100 from your pocket right this second. But what I need to do is understand, are you in the area that of problems I can solve? Is the problem big enough? You know, is there a market here for me? How can I help you? You know, depending on where you are in the process, right? If you know exactly what your product is, then you're looking for the people you can help the most. And for example, you know, there's nothing wrong for us doing events around funding if we're looking for startups who are seeking funding, that are looking to potentially join Startup Fuel or join Equivesto, and we can give all sorts of advice and have funding events. And there's nothing wrong for you to go on and say, you know, we can help you in this area if you're interested, just kind of like some of the stuff you do. But if you go on it saying, I want a sale, yeah, people can smell that a mile away. And I saw a funny post the other day. It was Friends. It was one of the girls talking to Joey, and she was saying, do not sell or whatever, and it says, oh, do my sales pitch at the end. When he responded on LinkedIn, we're trying to reach out, and it's, you know, people buy from people, so build a relationship first. And the question becomes now then, is there a right way and a wrong way to build a community around your business? Who wants to take this one first?
Yeah, so I'll jump in. I mean, kind of alluding to what I said before, it has to, like, you have to look at value, but also look at something that you are intrinsically motivated around. Like, if you are excited and passionate about something, naturally the community you're starting to build around you will also share that same enthusiasm for it. And if you do have that themes in place ahead of time, it becomes easier. Right? Like, you know, we are talking about small business and communities in this conversation right now. So we have a lot of topics and themes around community because we identified as a theme walking into this conversation in the first place. Similarly, when you're building a community, you need to start with a theme. A lot of people try to start communities and don't have a theme, but have a target segment. And it doesn't work like that. It usually works saying, we have a theme and a segment that we're trying to go after, and we're trying to add value to, because this part of it is where their weakness lies. And if we can all surround this and come together, we can increase our collective knowledge in that topic, removing a little bit of the weakness that was there before. So like planning ahead of time before jumping into something right away and trying to see where your interests align with your potential community's interests, putting a theme around it, a structure, is something I've seen people start communities and didn't do that and just didn't end up working out well. So not saying that it's the perfect formula, but at least it at least helps you move in the right direction.
Right. I think that definitely you're right on the money, and that brings more purpose to the community as well, right? Because if you're just like, I'm going to create a community for everyone, all 7 whatever billion of us are in this community, it's not niche enough. And so there's not a unifying factor to bring people together. I think there's some like numerical number, which is the maximum size of a group that people can be part of and still feel truly connected as part of that community. I think it's like 10,000 or something, but I'm not sure exactly what it is. But you want to make sure that you have something niche enough in what you're building your community around, that people are going to feel that connection to the other person because they share that idea, you know? Like people are always connecting and building communities over everything, you know, sports, different interests, like people like watches, people like planes, you know, you can build a community around anything, but you need to start with that sort of niche thing. And so using a business and using a sort of way that you're helping businesses is a great way, which is exactly what the whole, from my understanding, the startup fuel community is about. It's about, wow, there's this problem. We have entrepreneurs who need connections to people who can help them. Let's just bring them together and we'll just invite people, and people will come because they want to help.
Yep, nailed it.
Yeah, I think to build off that, it's this idea of just stakeholder management across your organization, from the people that you buy from, the people that invest with you, the people that work with you, and realizing that each one of those interactions, try as hard as you can to never make them transactional. Make them about partnership, make them about relationships. And at its very ethos, community is this idea of a point of connectivity. There's a starting point between the individuals or the groups that are interacting. And a lot of people get they get nervous, they get frustrated when they're trying to look at a blank page. Not everyone is good at that creative, like starting from scratch sort of thing. And now if you put that into having a conversation with someone that doesn't necessarily isn't in your community, or you don't have that point of connectivity with, that can be stressful. It can be a friction point, and not everyone's comfortable there. So the idea of that point of connectivity brings that comfort to the forefront, and it allows for that easier exchange of conversation, which then doesn't sound as salesy or pitchy. You're actually genuinely interested in what someone gets to know, and things flow a lot easier there. So I think when actually what you're getting at earlier is just like, try not to be myopic either, right? So that you're so niche that you're not going to be in there and open to other things in the community because you were only focused on one point of connectivity. Be open to some of these other ones. But I think if you can take that stress out of the situation and also be really open-minded, you're going to find that your communities are going to start to vent, and that too also becomes a really, really cool halo effect of things.
Yeah, and like one more thing, an exercise that I do with our team and we talk about all the time is about bullseye targeting, about having something that is an exact niche of what you're trying to go for, but having X, Y, and Z axis. If you think of a big sphere, X, Y, and Z, the X, Y, and Z axis could be 3 different characteristics of a community. It could be location, which you can start off with somewhere small and then expand more globally. It could be industry-wise, and it can be vertical-wise, where you're going. But when you start from day one, if you look at your community or what you're trying to do in that sphere idea, say, what is that red hot ball in the middle? What is that? Who are the characteristics of the 50, 100, 200 people that will resonate as well as they can to this? And then everything beyond that is up and down. What you start realizing is you'll have diehard people that will be part of the community, who will be the core central. And then you'll have this like floating, how do you say, gravitational field of other people that come and say, oh, I don't love everything, but I love this one concept, so I'm going to attach myself to the community. But even that can't happen without the foundation being in place. So
in orbit.
Yeah, you exactly, the orbit, exactly.
You each have to deal with multiple communities, like business partners, clients, user groups, investors. Do you approach each of these segments with different processes, tools, and content? Who wants to start with this one?
Yeah, I'll hop in. I think so. I think yes and no. You're going to approach each, and well, at least from my perspective, I'm approaching each one with different tools, but the same sort of mentality, which is that same sort of approach that we talked about with the rest of community, which is, okay, I'm here to provide value in some way as through this interaction, and I want to be able to support that. And then depending on which direction and which person, there's different kind of value that they're looking for. And so even the way that you separated them, those are essentially sub communities of your community, right? The Equivesto community is made up of companies raising funds, individuals investing in the funds, people who work at Equivesto, people who've invested in Equivesto to make this happen, all these different pieces, and then sort of the extended communities beyond that. So like the friends and family of each person involved in the community who maybe accidentally sees our Instagram posts or whatever it is. There's all these additional pieces that all are interconnected. And so approaching with the idea of creating value for each one of them is a sort of fundamental piece. But when managing each sub-community, there's a different reason, there's a different why that they're there and participating. And so I would approach each of them in a different way.
Yeah, content-wise, you need to curate your content, your outreach based on the type of person and the type of member in each sub-community. For me as well, like you talk about investors in your company, you talk about vendors, you talk about employees. Everybody has a different purpose, and there can be a central theme that ties everybody together 100%, but it will never be, if that one theme is communicating the same way to everybody, you may not get the same buy-in and the level of effect from everybody. So like taking that central theme and molding the verbiage around it to make it more colloquially acceptable by each sub-community is the way to go. So if I'm talking with investors, I have a lot more professional jargon. I have a lot more information relating to facts and details. When I'm talking to more entrepreneurs and startups, it's more about dreams, it's about vision. It's not necessarily, it's more informal, it's about fun, right? So there is different language we use when it comes to different types of communities. But at the core, it's hard to identify this, and I know we'll keep going back and forth, but as long as you're adding value, there needs to be a central nexus a nucleus that you have your entire purpose of what you're doing around, and every sub community around that has a different verbiage and language to try to relate to that central theme.
Yeah, I think it's key, definitely, Alex and Ash, about what you're talking about here, and I think the difference we get down to is it's this idea of nuance, and that there's a little bit of work that goes in there, and when you're communicating with these various groups, you have to understand it. Yeah, it's probably easier to go brushstroke. It's probably easy to template stuff and take that approach to things, but understanding each one of those communities, what's going to resonate with them, what they need to hear. It's this big difference of it. A lot of people will always talk about, well, that's not fair. My dad used to always give me crap. He'd say, no, don't talk to me about being fair. Talk to me about being equitable. And I think that's a really key nuance idea is don't make things equal, make things equitable. There's going to be things that members of my community need at sometimes what other members of my community don't. And there's going to be ways that I can communicate with them that might just be over their head and they're going to gloss over, and then they're going to feel excluded from the community. So that doesn't work either. But it means rolling up your sleeves. It means actually like going in and saying, okay, like the same way I don't want to talk to all of my customers the exact same way, but I want to be able to have them each understand a consistent message, right? And especially working back up my suppliers or the people I work with, the way I communicate with people in my organization. And looking at those communication patterns, you might have some people who work in the HR side of your business versus the people who work in marketing, who work in sales. They're all going to have a very different thing that energizes them, that's going to resonate with them. So you've got to tailor that communication a little bit and put those brushstrokes in. It's a little bit of extra hard work, but boy, does it make a difference, right? Because if someone understands what you're trying to get across, then things move that much faster. I think communication breakdown issues are some of the largest causes of issues in organizations, and have been for a long time. Like, it's not a new thing that we're battling.
Yeah, and there's also, we don't talk a lot about, is also saying no. I think we try to include a lot of things, and it creates a lot of noise sometimes. And once you've come to that understanding of what your theme and what your niche is, the hardest part is saying no to things that are outside of your orbit, right? We tried our best in communities to include it, because community is about inclusion. It's about making sure people are involved. But in 2021, when we are living in a world where there's 7 billion people on the planet, there's so many different communities everywhere, the only way to build something that is strong, long lasting, is to identify in what bounds you're going to play within, and anything beyond those bounds you say no to. Right? That's very tough to do and not easy to actually practically apply. But understanding that concept will only strengthen the ties and the bonds of that existing community.
I think there's something important with that though too, Ash, is you don't want to get to the de facto of saying no, especially if it's other people that are coming with ideas and suggestions. One of the best pieces of sort of business literature I've read is yes and it comes from the second city community. And so you're always accepting when someone says that. But if someone comes to you and says, well, we need to put sharks with laser beams on their heads, right? You go, well, yeah, that's an idea. Now bridge me from that idea to opportunity, and let's do this together. And I think if you walk with someone and you get them to explain their thinking, and sometimes they'll arrive at no, and if you can get that person to get to their no on their own, then the value of the no is still, the integrity is still there, but you haven't quashed the idea and the creativity side of it. And that's the delicate balance that we need there, because also in these pandemic times, we still need creativity. We need to figure out how we're going to do this a little bit differently. And I know, and the brushstroke sometimes can be, no, we've got to be laser focused. We can't be distracted by anything here. And just allowing someone maybe we don't need laser beams on the top of a shark's head, but let's talk through it and see exactly why we don't.
Yeah, I think the key word is balance. I think that's the thing. It's like understanding that balance is the difference between opening up too much creativity where you're kind of sidelined and sidetracked from what your main focus was, and opposed to a point like, hey, there is some relation. Let's try to massage it to figure out how that makes the most sense, right? So I'm still learning that myself. I don't know what that balance is. I don't know, where is it too far? Where is it perfect? But I guess that's part of the lifelong journey of being a community builder. It's like consistently learning and what should you include and what should you exclude from your community.
Well, you said it earlier. It's about having that core, right?
Yeah.
So if someone comes with that idea and you go, okay, cool. How does this align with our magnetic north or our core, right? So as long as someone can bridge me back to that, then cool, because this is the North Star that we're following. So it's that same exercise, right? And it goes exactly back. Like, keep yourself focused. You have to have that thing that's driving your ethos. And then if people start thinking in that way, they go, okay, cool. I've got to go problem solution when I come with an idea.
Yeah, it's actually similar to how me and Alex first, spoke with each other with Equivesto. I'd met his co-founder Ryan, and we were, similar businesses in terms of helping try to, get startups funded, but in different ways. And we had to come down. I remember this meeting in our office, Alex, where we came in and we talked about, where do you see yourself going? Where do we see us going? And how can we draw a parallel between the two of them without kind of giving up or kind of losing too much of each other's, what makes us unique and special? And it took some massaging some time, but we found a really cool partnership that made sense for both of us. But yeah, to your point, you are right. Just to try to figure out where that balance lies and how to say yes and no around that core, right? That theme of the core, and then trying not to stray too far from that is important.
Yeah, I know you guys have a really great back and forth there, so I don't want to jump too much in the middle.
Please do.
When I think about that magnetic north that you're talking about, it reminds me of that story with I think it was Kodak or whoever it was who made film for cameras. So their whole business model, they've been around for 100 years. They're all like, we make film for cameras. No one's ever going to mess with us. We're the titan of industry. Everyone will always need film for cameras. And digital cameras walked up with their little SD cards and just like slapped them across the face. And they lost all their market share because they got that core nexus wrong. They were focused on the actual service they provided instead of like the deep why, which is we help humans record memories. That was really what they did. And so they had mischosen that nexus. So they were turning away all these other pieces. I think they had some opportunity to buy like SanDisk or something like that. And they're like, nah, like, why would I do that? Same with Blockbuster, right? We are a movie rental business. We're not going to buy Netflix. Like, who cares? There's a story of, I can't remember his first name, but Hastings, the CEO of Netflix, listened in on a Blockbuster investor call with the CEO, and one of the analysts asked about Netflix, and they're like, what do you think of these guys? And the CEO was like, no, they're not a threat, totally different industry, we don't care. And Hastings got off the call and he's like, holy beep, like they just don't know. They just don't realize, like they don't know how big our sales are. They don't know what we're doing. They've gotten their why, they've gotten their nexus point wrong. And so they're not going to be able to bring in that creativity the way that they need to.
I guess you could say they'd like a rewind.
Nice.
It was right there. It was right there.
It was right there. But it's important though. Like first we struggled with TorontoStarts, who are we? But now, like, who do we serve? And we're pretty focused on the 0 to 10,000 MRR businesses. Because once you hit about 10,000 MRR, you're ready for a higher level of a community, mentorship, that kind of stuff. But so that's our area. But one thing we don't do is we don't help people get jobs. But a lot of people ask me about that all the time. So when you want to say no, it's hard to say no. But I say no, but TorontoJobs.ca, they do job events all the time. And I give them 3 or 4 different links to go to because I don't do that because it's just something I don't do. Yeah. You got to say no, that's outside my bounds. If you follow me on LinkedIn, I'll share when startups are hiring, but it's not something I do. Just as an example. So I agree, you have to kind of say no at some point. This is kind of where we are. Once you start building a community, the skeptics eventually come. So how do you deal with people who say, you know, Startup Fuel, are you actually going to get me funded? How can Equivesto help me? Why would I join the board of trade? How do you deal with those and win those people over? Who wants to start?
I could take it if you guys don't want to.
Okay.
I think, you know, from our perspective, there's I always approach it from the same way, but it can really go one of two ways, right? So the first one is, even if somebody is approaching you and sort of being combative, you don't want to return with combative. You know, if someone is saying like, oh, like, why are you even here? Like, I don't see the purpose of you. Like, on one hand, you want to sort of extend an olive branch and sort of offer in some way like, hey, like, you know, I'd love the opportunity to try to change your opinion of us. How can, like, these are some of the ways that I could try to provide value. But if it becomes clear after that conversation moves forward a little bit that they just are not interested, then you have to just cut and run. Like, you don't bother, right? We're not out here to please everyone. As much as we'd like to help everyone, we are here to help people who are looking for our help. So I'm here to offer help. And there's a whole list on Equivesto of all the great things we can do to help you. We've got a free learning center and all whatever, you know. You can find us on Startup Fuel as well. Like, we're all over the place about, here's where we can try to provide some value, both free and where you would pay us to what you want to do, and your business. But if you've decided, you know, deep down for whatever reason that no, there is no way that I can provide value to you, then it doesn't matter how hard I try. I'm happy to say, you know what, I if you're willing to give me the chance to change your mind, I'll happily go at it and try to demonstrate that. But if you're like, no, you can't change my mind, there's no way around it, then I'm not going to waste time and energy focusing on that. I want to make sure that it's spent on people who are looking for help that I can provide.
I think it's important too to remember, like, don't try and put a square peg in a round hole. Like, you can try and change that person's mind, but also you want to feel like you did genuinely change their mind and that they're going to add value to the community. Like, a community is a very fragile living thing, and you've got to be very mindful of it. So if you've got some people who just don't want to be there, who don't want to contribute to the community, you don't want to bring that into the mix, right? Because then that can also become a bit of a virus within your community.
Totally.
So you want to generally find their pain point and say, okay, look, you have some objections and there's some curiosity there. Let me probe a little bit more and figure that out. But you should also be going at this with the mindset of, is this person interested truly in joining the community and being a part of it? Right? I mean, sometimes these things just don't fit, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But, you know, it's like I alluded to it a bit earlier, but it's this thing, like, not all ideas are opportunities. There could be a person who's like thinking about doing something like this, but is it truly an opportunity for them? And is it an opportunity for you? If it is for both, then it makes sense. And it actually should probably be easy. If it seems really friction and it's a lot of heavy lifting to get to that place of common understanding, that's usually a good flag.
Yeah.
Sorry, no, go ahead.
No. I think you mentioned on something that I really want to expand a bit on there, especially it's like the protecting what you've already established. I think that is something that is really key here as well. It's like when you're looking at outside and new people coming in, some people may question the usefulness of what you're doing, but it doesn't detract from the fact that you have a base of people that are listening to you and trusting you. So like exercising judgment to understand what is somebody else saying, and are they actually a part of our target market? Are they part of the fit? And if they are, and they're still saying something that is different from what you're doing, it's a point of consideration. You have to think about it and say, you know, you don't want to go the routes of Kodak and the companies of the world that didn't listen to the people that were there, didn't understand the purpose of what they were doing, and decided to just take so much with tactics, they forgot about the strategy of what they're trying to do. So making sure that you are, if somebody comes and says, what can you do? I don't believe it. It's like, first of all, if you're coming at it from that combative position and you might not be good for the community. You know, regardless of, even if I change your mind and you're great now, it might not be useful. However, if the person is coming in with that, curiosity, hey, I'm not sure if this is a good fit. I'm not sure if this is valuable. Can you explain to me? Automatically, you know, they're willing to learn and willing to expand. there's a lot of people on this planet, and not everyone is going to be friendly, nice. There are a lot of trolls in this world. There's a lot of people who just want to waste time, and you have to identify, you've got your own precious energy and your own time that you don't want to waste. So making sure to give everyone their respect and their due diligence to understand what they're saying, but at a certain point, be decisive to be like, either this makes sense, this doesn't, or I'm open to hearing more.
Yeah,
you need to speak to Leaf fans everywhere.
Yeah.
There comes a point in time.
There comes a point in time. I'm one myself, so I don't.
Yeah, exactly. No, just to sort of add on to that, like if I look at even the process that we take at Equivesto when we're talking to companies that are considering us, we know very clearly that we serve a specific technical need, right? And we're not out here saying the only way that anyone should ever raise capital is through equity crowdfunding. We know all the different diverse options that exist out there. And the chance is we actually have a partnership or a great working relationship with one of those other options. And so if a company comes to us and is, getting advice about different directions that they could take their company and raising capital, we talk to companies a lot about this, there's actually a good chance that they don't need equity crowdfunding. They need to raise capital some other way. And that's fine. I'm totally happy to point them in that direction and introduce them if I can to, potentially to Craig, if they actually need some help before going out to capital, or, if they're going to look for a VC or connect that way, then maybe, we send them to Startup Fuel, or maybe they, need grants or something. Like there's so many other ways to raise capital and to grow your business besides just what we offer. And so we're not trying to pretend that we're the only way. And so if people don't see the value for our service, but it also becomes clear from talking to them that their business isn't a good fit, I'm not going to try to sort of force them to go my direction.
Yeah, I think that one of my mentors told me a line when when I was 17 and growing up, and he explained, he's like, maturity is knowing who you are and who you're not. That's what maturity is. And as you grow through time, when you're younger and you get older and older, you start realizing the world is an open place. It's an oyster. You can pick it whatever you want, but you have a finite time on this planet. Right? And you can only pick, we are limited by our decisions on what we can pick because of 24 hours in a day. So what we choose, we can either, enhance it and heighten it within certain jurisdictions and realms that relate to who we are, or we can dilute it and try to be much more open. And I'm telling you, when it comes to communities, the prior, where you're focused, passionate about something, running it and saying, I'm dedicating myself to this one thing, it naturally brings action from others around you to come and fall around that same piece.
I agree. I was looking on the Board of Trade's website, and I wanted to know questions about what kind of connections, when we're talking about speaking of community, would I make on one of your trade missions? So what happens on those, and why would I partake as a business?
It's good. I think really one of the things we've done is there's a nice little value chain, which is the board side of things has a good policy and research team, and also our Economic Blueprint Institute. So very data driven. And we take a look at the business problems that we hear from our members, and then we do some research on them. And so we're launching this priority markets report that's going to be coming out actually later this month. And it's really looking at what are some of these emerging markets, and one of those places, the great Wayne Gretzky quote, like, let's go where the puck's going to be, right? So we look at these markets, we help educate companies and why they should go into these markets and help build a fit there. Teach them about the nuance of doing business in the region. We set up those business to business meetings with people who are actually on the ground, and we work really closely, with the Ontario government, with the federal government, with Trade Commissioner Services, and actually have people that are in there that can help plug you into the community, the local business community, in a much more expedited way. And I think that is where we add a tremendous amount of value there. We also work with large partners that give you tips on how do you finance these trade missions, what sort of government programs and grants are available. So there's actually opportunity for you to go on an exploratory trade mission, and you're not really out of pocket in doing so. There's not a lot of people who necessarily know that. So there's leaning on that expertise of the people who've been there, who've done that, who can help coach your business. So learning and entering into these markets in a much more fast and smart surgical way, I think is really beneficial to the businesses. So, we've done that where we set up an e-commerce trade mission back last summer, was one of our first virtual trade missions, and we were teaching people how to get online with Alibaba in China. That's invaluable. And I mean, if you're not in that market and you're not doing that sort of day to day, it's not something that you can find through a couple of YouTube videos. You really do need some nuance on how to deal with that landscape. And I think that's the benefit and the value that we're bringing to the companies that are participating in the trade missions.
Ash, I think you should get, if not already, you should get the Board of Trade and the World Trade Center on Startup Fuel for sure.
I can't believe I haven't already. I met somebody recently. I mean, maybe before the pandemic from the World Trade Center.
Recently.
No, I'm like losing my mind on like timelines now. I'm just thinking like,
no, it's Blur's Day. That's fine.
Yeah, like PC, pre-COVID, pre-C, like we'll call it. Yeah. So and like I definitely would love to chat and see more. But like there's a question in the chat that says, if your community could be doing one thing to help you grow, what would it be, right? And I think one thing that is also useful for communities in growth is about consistency. It's about picking a medium to connect with the audience and doing some research around why that medium makes the most sense, and then having a consistent approach to that medium, right? So like in this case, having streams at nighttime often and on a schedule that people can expect and grow is an example of that consistency. You keep doing it over and over again, and enough people, you'll learn from what is going right and what's going wrong. So that's a big piece of community building, is being consistent in the activities that you're doing, repeatable, scalable things that can happen often. And once you start doing that, is also taking insight out of it, like looking at what impact has been done, how can we improve it. But at some point, if you're adding enough of that value and consistency, your market, your community will come back to you. And I'm starting to see that too. I've been making introductions for startups and investors and people for 9 years, traveling all over the world doing that. And I never asked for anything in return. I just, love seeing people do well. And especially if I can help do that, that's my purpose in life, is helping other people, succeed and be their best. But in a sense, now I'm seeing people are connecting other people back to me. Like, hey, this is somebody I met, you helped me here. I want them to bring into our community now. And that is probably the point where you have like a tear in your eye as a community builder, when somebody is recommending somebody outside your community to come in because of something you did for them, is like, I don't know, like it's just, I get emotional around that. It means that you added enough value where people thought that they could feel trusted and supported to bring other people into that safe haven as well.
Yeah, it's farming, right? It's you've been working so hard, you've been tilling the soil, you've been planting seeds everywhere, and then all of a sudden you look behind you and like this great thing has sprouted as a result of all that hard work, and
exactly.
and literally we find ourselves at the fruits of our labor.
Yeah.
Alex, what community misconceptions exist related to equity crowdfunding?
Yeah, I think there's a few different ones, and that's something that we're hoping to combat a bit. So I'm glad you asked the question. I think people can sort of come from two directions, but I think one that we face a lot is that people are, I guess they're hoping that, because we have some 1,000 investors on the platform, that means that they're all going to invest in your business, and the community is already there waiting for you to bestow upon them the brilliance of your idea, and they'll magically throw money at you because they're there and they say that they want to be investors. And so sadly, that is a bit of a misconception. There is a community of investors on the platform, and they are looking for exciting deals, but there's no guarantee that, your deal will be the right fit for any one person. And so with equity crowdfunding, part of what's exciting about it is that you can bring your existing community that you've built from sort of outside, that weren't investors before, and sort of bring them to become investors in your business. And so with that sort of situation, you do need to go out and sort of activate and galvanize that community to come and participate. Sadly, it's not that there's just a community of people waiting around, like holding their money, wanting to throw it at you, as much as we wish it is. And I feel like Ash is probably similar with the VCs on the platform. They're there, but the founders still need to do the work to go out and sort of present themselves and be something that's attracting people to come in. And that activity will actually help grow the community for everyone.
Alex, I think there's a great example that you can use there too as an analogy. It's the way that the music industry's changed. Like there used to be this role, the A&R person, that was really like there was a handful of them in the music world, and they were the tastemakers. They were the deciders that this is going to be a hit, this is a good band or an artist or not. And then we look at digital streaming, the world is the tastemaker now. Like if
Right.
something's good, it's going to be good, right? And now you've got this bigger community out there, and so you're seeing this cream rising to the top in a less artificial and a more democratic way, really. So I think opening up there, you've now given a lot more people to say, no, actually, this might be a viable idea, where the traditional smaller group with a more narrower mindset might have passed on that opportunity.
Exactly. Our focus is about democratizing an investment and allowing companies to get access to capital who might have otherwise been looked over for whatever reason, right? Instead of just saying, okay, there's 50,000 angel investors in Canada, I need to convince 3 of them to give me $100,000 each for 300,000. That's what I need. I have to do this. Suddenly now you can go to all Canadians, and there's definitely going to be people there, who believe in and associate with your business. And so connecting to that much broader community allows you so much more opportunity to drive your business forward.
Yeah, I know it's a common misconception for equity crowdfunding that people are gonna by just being there, you're gonna get money. I think this was the Kickstarter days when Kickstarter and Indiegogo came out, and there was a big passion around it. It was a big excitement, and then when equity crowdfunding came out, people thought, hey, it could be the same thing. I just put something up there, and it's all of a sudden it's there. It does no, there's ideas are a dime a dozen. There are hundreds and thousands of ideas out there that should never be commercialized, right? And like people just having one of those ideas and coming up with no research, no way of actually bringing a community together to do this is crazy. And it is a misconception because if I'm coming and paying an Equivesto to help me list and do things, I'd expect something in return. But managing that expectations properly and explaining to them this is about engaging your community. We can bring people in, we can help that out. But at the end of the day, if you're not doing anything yourself to bring people together, even if you do raise money here, where's your business going in the future? Like what's going to be the next step after that? Nothing. Right.
Well,
Greg,
and just to clarify, sorry, Sean.
No, I was just going to say he's not investing on the sharks with the laser beams.
Yeah, sadly not. I do just want to clarify though, just for everyone, that we do due diligence on companies. So you can't just show up with kind of nothing and raise on the platform, just to be clear.
Yeah.
Ash, why should companies join Startup Fuel?
So a lot of the community that you're talking about right here, we're actually building the world's probably first and most intricate B2B network. So as opposed to the LinkedIn's and Facebooks and Instagrams of the world, where they started the C2C networks, add the people around you, build your community of friends and family. This is a B2B network where businesses are actually adding each other. They're following other vendors, other startups, other companies, and we're starting to create communities around people's businesses, right? And so what we're doing is people are sharing resources, competitions, grants, as Sean was talking about. A lot of these programs, people are coming together, but we also are going out to the community and scraping all that information, bringing that in for one place. So we're using Startup Fuel as a way to say there's a lot of noise in the startup world. There's a lot of information, a lot of connections, lots of things to do. And we are trying to create a yellow pages, organize everything into buckets and categories for each type of group, and then build algorithms to help notify people, oh, this is something that you is very, very well positioned for. Come and take a look. So you're not wasting both sides' time. So for people that just are starting, businesses, starting ventures, starting to grow, you come, you register. That's all you got to do. Every time something pops up that fits you, you will get pinged, an email, a notification, and if you're getting something in return, that this is built for you. And when the other side, and I work a lot with the people providing resources, the investors and stuff, they are also bound. I don't think a lot of people know this, but they are bound by limitations on what they can do. They come in when they raise money, when VC funds raise money, when accelerator programs go out and do things, government grants, there are bosses. There are people that they have to adhere to. So when they go out, they put clear guidelines. And what a lot of people think is that, hey, if we are amazing and if we're great, they'll be able to give up their limitations. They can go outside their bounds, and it does not work like that, right? So as I'm starting to realize, people are less flexible than it seemed before, we are organizing it so people understand that what can't they be flexible around, and how to better position yourself for the resources and connections that are also looking for you in return.
Yeah, managing expectations.
Yeah, exactly. Managing expectations with data and resources. Yep.
So I wanted to thank everyone for taking the time today and just do one last roundabout. If people wanted to find out more about the World Trade Center and what you do there, Sean, and do you have any parting words for our audience?
Yeah, I would just say if you know people right now who, especially given the pandemic, have found themselves, being dragged into the digital space, and they really want to understand, okay, did I just do what I needed to do, or is there a smarter way to do this? I would really encourage a lot of people just to come to our website, which is it's supportbusiness.bot.com. There's a ton of resources that are there. Even if you're thinking, the company's actually been really successful with the pandemic and we want to grow to some other markets and exporting is our next step, or even going on a trade mission. There's lots of information there, but just in general, if you think that you've got a community and you want to expand your community, or you don't have one when you get into one, I think the Board of Trade is not a bad place to start. I mean, we've got over 13,500 companies that are in there, and that's a pretty good size community there, and with a long-standing tradition.
What was that URL again?
Supportbusiness.bot.com.
Supportbusiness.bot. Okay, I'm going to jump on and take a look at this as well.
Yeah, no, that's great. And the digital needs assessments actually rate at rap.bot.com, RAP. So I can throw that in the chat too.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Alex, if do you have any parting words? And if people want to find out more about you and Equivesto, where do they go?
Yeah, so we're always looking to help businesses at Equivesto. We have a bunch of totally free resources, including legal templates and everything that businesses can grab, totally, as I mentioned, free of charge. But you can check us out at equivesto.com, EQUIVESTO.com. Everything is there. You can follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. We put posts out about stuff we're working on, exciting companies that are coming up. So look out for that. And yeah, happy to connect and support businesses however I can.
Thanks. And Ash, you have any final words, and where do people go to find out more?
Yeah, so I just started a podcast, as you can tell with this mic, and I'm into it's almost like a late night Jimmy Kimmel show, but instead of movie actors plugging their movies in, we have venture funds who are launching new funds, accelerator programs, government grants, anybody launching new initiatives for companies. I want to come on and talk a little bit about what they're doing and who should be connecting with them. Podcast is on Spotify, on iTunes. It's called the Startup Fuel Show. That's an amazing way. I'm plugging a lot of my energy and resources into providing education for the community so that they can learn, like Sean said before, the rising tide lifts all boats. If we can build community where everybody can do well, it'll only bring more attention to small business, to the sector, from other investors and things like that. So as I said, that's probably, if you haven't already registered your company on startupfuel.com, you are literally missing out on tons of free opportunities and resources. So go and add it right there. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Thanks again for taking the time to be part of the panel today. Thank you for everyone who showed up and gave us some questions. Really appreciate it. And we'll see you all again soon.
Cool.
Awesome.